and not what I did for you that has redeemed you. We see the same thing in Galatians. We see Paul talking about it, that he has to remind the people that it is not what you do for God that builds the kingdom. And you know, if you ever talk to deep people who are like in the church world, like the church world is their life, they're like, oh, I'm just building kingdom. I'm just working hard in the kingdom. I'm just doing kingdom. And you should do kingdom. But when kingdom takes over 7 days a week, we have a problem because you think you're more important to the kingdom than God. And you would never say it out loud. You would never get to the place where you openly and honestly admit it, but our heart posture turns to, if I don't show up, it won't get done. And especially in a small church, especially if you got a little bit of a position, if I don't show up, it won't get done. Well, here's the truth. A lot of stuff don't get done in the booth, but Cole still goes on vacation and somehow service happens. Somehow we go live. There have been times Pastor Will goes on vacation and he is an excellent pastor, but church still goes on because the law of the Sabbath is this, is if it's God's, God can sustain it until I get back. And if I don't believe that, I don't believe that God is God. And if I don't believe God is God, we're going to figure out real quickly in chapter 32 what that turns into. All right. Like I told y'all, this was a really, really short chapter. We're almost done with it. But he says in verse 16, the Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign to me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested. Now, we're not bound by this rule. But I want you to think about this Sabbath. Literally in verse 15 that we just left, the word is Sabbath and Sabbotham are the two Hebrew words, and they're back to back. And in the lexicon, they're literally numbers 76 and 77. They're literally together, and one means Sabbath, defined as Sabbath, assuming that we know what that means. But the next one means an intermission. Now, I went to go see Hamilton last month. You know, the play. I went to go, when they brought Broadway to Birmingham, I went to go see Hamilton. And about an hour and a half into Hamilton, it's an extremely long play, but it's good. After about an hour and a half, they bring up the lights. And for about 15 minutes, everybody goes back and gets snacks, uses the bathroom, because we had been sitting there for a while. And if we were going to sit there for another hour and a half, well, a lot of us needed to go to the bathroom and get our snacks refreshed. And then after the 15 minutes, you return to the show, and the show picks up as if it never stopped. The idea of a Sabbath rest is not that I have to begin again or I have to go and interrupt what I did. The idea of a Sabbath rest is that I'm going to stop dead in my tracks, and I'm going to go rest. I'm going to leave my tools. I'm not going to, because you know we're real good about this. We go to church on Sunday, and then we say, now I'm going to go get ready for the week. And I know I'm stepping on toes. I'm stepping on my own. Or we say, now I'm going to go cook. Or now I'm going to go and I'm going to do a little bit of work today so that I won't be so bogged down on Monday. You know, we're all guilty of it, myself included. But the idea of a Sabbath rest is I'm going to stop dead in my tracks. I'm not going to touch it. I'm trusting that God is going to make it okay on Monday so that when I pick up where I left off on either Saturday or on Friday, that my rest, because I honored God, God will sustain me. And when we look back down at Sabbath, the way God set it up, and I'm just going to discourse real quick, is not only does God rest on the seventh day after creation, he then later is going to tell the children of Israel, he's going to say, okay, now on every seventh year, let the land rest. Now, y'all know I have a garden. My father-in-law has a garden. And y'all know he told me the kitchen table Sunday. He said, well, Cole, it seems like if I don't let my ground rest, my fruit doesn't grow. Or they're smaller. If I don't let the ground rest every 6-7 years, it won't yield any nutrients. God also set into motion a Jubilee year every 49th year. When 50 rolls around, you're supposed to forgive debt. I've yet to see anybody do that. I've yet to see anybody do that. But God set it in motion that everything, the ground, the air, the trees, everything is supposed to rest. Even our debt is supposed to get a break. Because he said, I didn't need to sleep. But the way that I set you up is that you can't keep going the way I designed you to keep going if you don't rest. And when I look at the way a lot of us live, we live real hard and fast, and we work and we work and we work and we work and we work. And too many of us retire to go home and die. Or we retire to go home and be sickly. And I believe this in my belly, and I got a little bit of research, not a lot, a little bit of research that says that those who take the Sabbath seriously, they live longer and they're healthier. I'm not saying that I co-sign Seventh-day Adventists because I don't believe their argument about Saturday. But one thing is true, the Seventh-day Adventists live 10 years longer than most other Christians. If the expected life is 7 to 8 to 80 years, they're living 80 to 90 years because they stop dead in their tracks on that seventh day and they rest. Between them and the Jews, they're the reason they make stoves with Sabbath settings, so you don't have to turn it on Sunday. They're serious about it. All right, last verse in this chapter. And then he says, when the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him the 2 tablets of the covenant law, the tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God. Now, what's funny, y'all ever heard somebody say it's not written in stone, so we can change it? God himself literally wrote this in stone so that it could not be changed. Now, I want you to remember this. Moses is about to come down the mountain with these 2 big rocks, these 2 big stones in his hands. I want you to think about how much work that is. Tablet we're imagining is about this big. He's holding 2, and he's hiking down the mountain. I don't know if you've ever been hiking, but I have. And without a backpack, without anything, hiking is a lot of work. It is really hard work. And so he's carrying these 2 stone tablets. He's going down the mountain. This is important because something's going to happen when he gets down the mountain. Let's go to chapter 32. And I don't think we'll get through 32, but we will get started with it. I told them the NIV version. And it says this way. It reads this way. Now remember, Moses is holding those tablets. Now we're going to change scenes. It says, when the people saw Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come make us gods. Who will go before us? As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. And Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So that all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. Let's stop. So Moses goes up the mountain for 40 days. And 40 days is a long time, but it's not a long time. You know, it's a while for somebody not to be back, and you don't know when they're coming back, but there's a big fire burning at the top of the mountain. So clearly something's going on. And y'all are at the bottom of the mountain waiting on him to come down, and there's a fire going on at the top. So something's happening, but y'all figured after, a week or 2, I don't know what happened to him. Maybe God burned him up. Maybe he's dead. But since he's been gone for this long, let's make a God. Now here's the problem with that. Y'all came out of Egypt and you saw God. You saw God. You walked. You saw you saw the sea open. You were at home when the death angel passed over, and it didn't touch your house, but it touched everybody else's house. You saw Egypt's streets full of frogs and locusts. You saw all the Egyptians with boils on them. You experienced it when you crossed over the river, the ocean. You saw Pharaoh's army swallowed up. You saw the fire by night and the cloud by day. You saw it. Your leaders went up the mountain at the beginning of this 40 days, and God stood at the distance and supped with you. Before that, you saw the fire and the earthquake when he came and addressed you. Y'all have experienced God. It's not like today when people are like, well, how do you know God is real? How do you know that's God talking to you and that's not just your thoughts? That wasn't the case for them. And I think what's scary is Aaron, who has been hanging out with Moses and has been the mouthpiece for Moses and has had experiences with God, and him and her stood up and held up Moses' hands. He says, okay, let's make a God. And I want you to see this because we make fun of them. We really do, but I want you to let's just think for a second. If I've been praying, God, I need you to heal my kid, and we've been in the hospital for 40 days, and my kid is getting worse. Now, I gave my life to Christ. I saw you heal my mama. I experienced you do stuff in wonderful revivals when I was a child, but that's been a long time ago. And now we've been sitting at Children's for the last 40 days. And somebody shows up at the hospital saying, well, I got these crystals. You want to try that? If you're not renewing your faith and actively pursuing the presence of God out of desperation, you'll be like, well, I'm desperate. At this point, I don't know what else to do. I don't think Moses is coming back, and I don't really know God. I know God through Moses. I don't know how to get in contact with God without Moses. So we can do what everybody else does. We'll build something to worship God that brought us out, and that'll just have to be God. Stupid. It's stupid, but we do it. We do it. I got a favorite person that I wouldn't dare call his name, even though I know he don't watch the broadcast. That he, for every Sunday of my life, would get up and watch them Cadillacs, because it represented where he had come from. Because he wasn't impoverished anymore. Would cut that grass every day. And for him, it represented that he had come out, not realizing it had become his God. Would say, well, praise God for that. But on Sunday morning, instead of being in somebody's pews, he was out there watching them Cadillacs. And I love him. I love him. But that's what we do. It becomes our thing. We want something to represent what we're grateful for. But watch this. The people took all the earrings off and brought them to Aaron. Let's keep going, verse 4. And he took what they handed him and made it into an idol, cast into the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. And they said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Now let's think. Yesterday, this thing didn't exist. Last week, this thing didn't exist. How is this our God that brought us out of Israel? So let me give you a little bit of background, and I thank God that this was actually a debate in my house about 2 weeks ago. There is an Egyptian god called Apex. Apex is a calf. And Apex, I don't even remember what Apex represents, but Apex is a calf, and because he was a very prominent calf in Egypt, most of the Egyptians bowed down to this calf. And so their idea of what a god looked like a cow. And because their idea of what a god looked like a cow, when they think of God, their imagery of God was a cow. So they said, let's melt down some gold. And when I think of God, that's what I think. And this is I want you to see, this is primarily why God says, you shall have no other gods before me, and make no graven images. Because no matter how good, no matter how good you say I am, no matter how much you say you love me, you cannot capture all that I am. And here's what happens if I try to capture God and say God has the essence of Apex in some way, and this is a long stretch. God is so much more than what Apex can do. Or let's say God has the essence of Osiris, because you remember Jesus speaks to the sun, to the waters. He tells it, peace be still, and the oceans obey. He has that ability, but God is not just the master of the seas. He's the master of the air. He's not just the master of the air. He's the one that heals us. He's not just the one who heals us. He's the one that sustains us. He's not just the one that sustains us. He's the one that loves us. And so God says, don't put me in a box, because all these other little powers and these idols and these things you created, they are limited. And they're limited because they're not me. So if you put me in a box, you're going to only see pieces of me. And I'm going to go a little bit further. Sometimes we put God in a box. And so I think that I can ask God for financial blessing, but I can't ask God for a relationship. Or I think I can ask God for a relationship, but I can't ask God to help me at work, because I think my worlds are separated. Because we put God in a box. When I envision God, I think God is Jehovah Jireh, but I don't think of him as Jehovah Shalom. I can't ask him for peace. Or I think of God as Jehovah Shalom. He's the God of peace, but I wouldn't dare ask him to help me understand something. And he's all of those things. Then they say, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt, verse 5. And when Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord. Now, I want you to see this. That's capital L-O-R-D. Big caps. That tells me that when they did this, they were not intentionally trying to defy God. They were trying to capture God. Okay? They were not trying to be in rebellion. Now, they were real wrong. They had gone very left. But they were not trying to actively defy God. This is what I'm trying to help you see. Is sometimes we'll get an idea based off of what we see in the world. Kind of like on TV, how people have started saying in the last 10 years that I asked, put it out in the universe. Or they've started saying, I'm manifesting. And if you look at the base principles, you say, well, the Bible says I can believe for what I say. And so then I start adapting that jargon that I'm manifesting. Or the Bible said that the power of life is in my tongue. And so then I start adopting the language that I'm putting it out in the universe. And so as I adopt the language, I'm as I'm adopting the language, I'm not trying to defy God. I'm just trying to be modern. I'm just trying to adapt my jargon to the modern age. Well, here's where this is dangerous. Manifesting comes from witchcraft. And so that principle came off of TikTok and other places out of another cult. And so people who were doing that were trying to will it within themselves to manifest something. When I say that I'm putting it out in the universe, that is saying that I'm trusting the universe to provide. Now, that's dangerous because the universe is a created thing like me. It can't provide nothing, but the God of the universe can provide. And so what happens is as we adjust or adapt our jargon, we end up tapping into stuff that's powerless, and then we wonder, why is it not working? Or we say, well, I manifested that. We begin to whittle away at our faith. And then when a test or a trial comes, I don't have any strength. Because I stopped using faith language. I stopped praying. I stopped spending time in the Spirit because I was adapting to the culture that I lost my spirituality. Does that make sense? So they weren't trying to purposely defy God, but because they were so indoctrinated in a culture that was anti-God, it turned into complete, all-out idol worship. Okay? Verse 6. So the next day, the people rose early. And watch this, they sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. So they thought they had done a good thing. Now, I want you to remember this. Moses is on the way down with the instructions. Do y'all remember? God gave him instructions on how to sacrifice, on how to have a fellowship offering, how to sup with him, how to come down. But because of their impatience and their desperation for a relationship with some type of deity, not necessarily God, that they go out, they step out, and they do something profane. Now, you remember I've been kind of telling you about profane fire or strange fire or things that displease God and how they really, really make God mad. Like they really, really, really disgruntle God. And so the people get up early. You know, anytime you get up early in the morning, you are thinking you're doing a good thing. You know, whether you're getting up to pray, whether you get up to work out, you really feel like you are doing, y'all making a sacrifice. I'm sacrificing my sleep. I'm sacrificing my energy. I'm doing all the right things. They woke up smiling. We're going to sacrifice to God. God has shown up. Not thinking we made this God. And so as they sacrifice their time and their energy, they go down there and they do a bad thing. I just want to say this. You can sacrifice good energy, good time, good intentions, and still do a bad thing. My mama has a saying that the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. And I used to hate to hear her say that. Because I would say, Mama, I meant to. You know, I didn't clean the kitchen before she got home, but I meant to. I had every intention to. The pathway to hell is paved with good intentions. I used to hate to hear her say that. But I think that resonates with me more here than anywhere else because they thought they were doing a good thing. They thought we were going to please God today. We've captured his essence. We're finally going to be able to worship. We were down here for 40 days. We done figured it out. And instead, they made a mess. They indulged in revelry. They indulged in debauchery. Verse 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down. See, God had to let Moses know that they were up to something. Go down because your people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. What? Wait. I thought they were the Lord's people. But have you ever been talking to your, I've been talking to Aaron. And my mama or my daddy, we'll just pick on daddy tonight. My daddy will do something, and Aaron will call me, and she'll say, let me tell you what your daddy did, as if he's not my daddy. God and Moses are having a conversation like, let me tell you what your people are doing. He says, go down to your people who you brought out of Egypt, as if God didn't bring them out, have become corrupt. Verse 8, and they have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Verse 9, I have seen these people, the Lord says to Moses, and they are a stiff-necked people. So God, of course, tells Moses, okay, this has been great. We've been fellowshipping together. We've been having this sweet time in the Lord. But you got to go because the thing I called you to is on fire. And if you don't go right now, they're going to be too far gone. I don't know about you, but have you ever had you were having a good time in God. You were singing there, singing your songs, praising God. Y'all was, all kind of peace. And then somebody outside the window or the door calling my mom, or the phone starts ringing, and all of a sudden, you in your place of peace, and your place of peace is gone because the world has a demand on your gift. Count it a good thing. Because those moments of spending time in the presence of God prepare you for the moments of chaos. And often there are loud moments of chaos that follow great moments of power. And so that too is a reason God impresses upon us the importance of rest. Because if I've been resting in the presence of God and I've been filled with his glory, Moses is going to come down full of the glory of God. I got a little bit more patience. I've got a little bit more insight. I've got a little bit more presence of mind so that when I come down, now I can say, okay, now let's use a little wisdom. Now I'm going to be angry. But I got a little more presence of mind. Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I think maybe 2014, there was a song that came, I need just a little more Jesus. It's that little more Jesus that will sustain you. It will keep you. But he says, I've seen these people, the Lord said to Moses, and they are a stiff-necked people. They are stubborn. They are headaches. And I don't know about you, but I got a couple of those in my life. Verse 10, now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. He's talking to Moses. God is getting angry. He's like, I can't believe I just did all this for these people. I cannot believe that I've done all. I've shown myself to them. I have come down. I hadn't walked with this many people since not in this time. I have never walked with this many people. I have come down, and you mean to tell me that y'all down there worshiping something y'all made? I'm about to destroy y'all. I'm about to destroy y'all like I destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm about to tear some stuff up. Watch what happens though. Verse 11. But Moses, and this is why God called Moses, sought the favor of the Lord, because Moses was mad at him too. But he cared for the people. He said, but he sought the favor of the Lord his God. He said, Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with your great power and a mighty hand? Let's keep going. 12. Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on the people. Now I want you to see what just happened. Moses is disgusted too. God is really mad, and he's kind of upset, but watch how he turns it. He says, but your reputation, God, it's not at stake with the Israelites. It's at stake with the rest of the world. God, I want you to remember that you delivered the Israelites, but the Egyptians saw you face to face. You brought out your people, but now the Egyptians are questioning what they've been serving all the time. They're having to ask the question, is Apex real? The Israelites may not be. They're having to ask the question, is Osiris real? Because you literally defeated their entire army. You tore up their whole country. And so God, don't destroy them for your reputation. God, your reputation is on the line. Don't save them because they deserve to be saved. Don't have mercy on them because they deserve mercy, because they don't. But God, your reputation in the earth matters. I want you to see this. God does things for us. He loves you. He cares for you. But he don't do it for you. He does it so that people in the earth can see. How in the world did you come out of Birmingham or come out of the airport and you living in a house like that? How did you come out and start at the bottom and end up you ran the organization? How could you come out of here with just a little bit of education and you running people with a lot of bit of education? How could that be so? The answer is clear. God has a reputation he has to uphold. God has a reputation that he's going to make good on because you're his child. You're his. And so Moses, he says, God, don't, I know you're mad and you have every right to be. You have the right to destroy them, but God, it wouldn't look good on you. And then let's go on to 13. And then he goes even further. He rubs it in a little bit. He said, God, I know your character. I've been hanging out with you long enough to know that you care about what you said. And since you care about what you said, I need you to remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by yourself You didn't have nobody else to swear on but yourself. You said, I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. And I will give your descendants all this land. I promised them. And it will be their inheritance forever. God, all of them, that's their descendants. And I want you to see this, sure. When God said, I'll just make you numerous, Moses, that would have fulfilled the promise. But I want you to see this tension, because God is angry at the sins of the people. Moses is too, but Moses so intercedes for them, because God would have been well in his rights to touch Moses. Moses have 12 tribes, and we'd be singing a different story. We'd be reading a different story, and God would have fulfilled his promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But because Moses too cared for the people, this is a pastor's heart. He too cared for the people. He said, God, don't crush them for Abraham's sake. You know, your friend, the one who was willing to sacrifice Isaac on a mountain just to be in communion with you. For your friend, Abraham, who left his whole family and everything he knew just to be obedient to you. God, for their sake, because I know the people at the bottom of the mountain don't believe it, but God, you had a friend. You put your word out there on it. Let's watch. He says, you promised them an inheritance forever, verse 14. And then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster that he threatened. God cares about his reputation. The only thing above his name is his word. And so whatever, and I want you to think about it, his word is what he said, but it is also how he appears in the world. Now let's think about it. You got his name and his word. His name, how we know him, what we say, but his reputation. His word, what he said. What does Moses do? God brings up his name and his reputation. He said, what did you say and who are you? Now, I don't want you to think that God was about to sin or to renege, because God could have created a loophole. As a matter of fact, he had already figured it out. He said, we're just going to make it come through Moses. But because God was reminded of what he said. Now let me help you. If you want God to do something on your behalf, that's why you got no scripture. You just tell God what he said. You're sick. Lord, you said by your stripes I was healed. Remind God of what he said and who he is. You're wanting your finances to get fixed. Remind God of his reputation and remind God of what he said. And that's how you get things done in the earth. It's not manipulation. It is the way that God works. Because he said, there is nothing above my word, and the only thing above my name is my word. So when you remind him of who he is, I'm telling you, it is one of the few things that I promise you there's a lot of things that I promise you work, but it works. And not only does it works every time. Now, it may not work in your time, but it works every time. All right, let's keep going. Verse 15. Then Moses turned, and he went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant law. Remember, he's still carrying it. And they were inscribed on both sides, front and back. God had a whole lot to say. And the tablets were the work of God. Remember this. The writing was the writing of God engraved on the tablets, verse 17. When Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, there is a sound of war in the camp. Sound of war. Now, remember, it's supposed to be a sound of worship, but there's a sound of war in the camp. Hold on to that, verse 18. Moses replied, it is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear. Verse 19. When Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them into pieces at the foot of the mountain. Now, God told him what he told him when he got down that he was going to see a calf. He told him when he got down that he was going to see that the people had gone left. He had warned him, and God's anger kindled hot first, and Moses tried to cool him. When Moses saw it with his own eyes, he broke the very thing that God had entrusted him with. Now, Moses had not sinned. Moses wasn't down there worshiping. But I want you to see that Moses was carrying the word. And when he got down to the bottom of the mountain, he dropped the word. He dropped what God himself had built. Sometimes, there used to be a saying that I'm going to put my religion down when somebody cut you off in traffic, or somebody they mess with you, or they put you in a bad situation. I'm about to lay down my religion. Moses literally drops, but he drops the word. And I want you to see the ramification for Moses dropping the word. He's going to have to go back up the mountain. And when he gets back up the mountain, God's finger is not going to write the next one. God is going to require Moses to sit there and chisel out everything that he said again. I want you to see this. The first time you went up, I gave it to you. But the second time, it's going to be some work. Now, what we're about to see is there's about to be some stuff, and I'm debating whether we're going to keep going. We're going to go a few more verses, and then we'll pick up here next week. But he says, and he took the calf the people made, he burned it in the fire. And then he ground it into powder, and he scattered it on the water and made the Israelites drink it. Yeah, he was angry. He was angry. He got angry. He was so upset. He said, oh, absolutely. Now, it looked like something. When I picture this, I picture like one of those reality television shows. Like I can see Gordon Ramsay, and they made some stupid, they messed up the risotto. I don't know if y'all watch these shows. And he just stuffs it in their mouth. He was so angry. He grinds it up down to a powder. He makes them drink it because he's trying to show them how stupid, how quickly we forget. How soon we forget. God blessed you last year, and now you're over here saying, I don't know if I want to be a Christian. You're over here saying, God delivered and gave me exactly what I needed. He brought me through school, and now that I'm out of school, I'm over here questioning whether he's real. How quickly. And it's amazing how suffering will draw us near to the cross, but success often makes us want to put a gulf in between it. I'm not in slavery anymore. Maybe I can create my own way. Maybe I'm just going to experience, and we love to call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've just moved on beyond that level. I'm not at the base level, I'm at self-actualization. And I'm going to say this, and I've said it before, and it may get me canceled, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you have to actualize yourself, you're in a dangerous place. Because the moment you think you can sustain you're in dangerous waters. And so he in his anger, and I can't say that I wouldn't have done this, but he grounded the powder, he scatters it. Let's keep going to verse 21. And he said to Aaron, what did these people do to you that you led them into great sin? Now you remember, it was the people's idea. It was the people's idea. They said, let us build a god. But Aaron, being the man of God, did not say, no, that's not what we're going to do. And so because he's the man of God, he's been left in charge. He's the one who's been put in position, and he does not stop the people. He's the one who's in trouble, and he led them because he didn't stop them. I want you to see this, and I think we're going to stop here tonight. If you find yourself in a place and you've got leadership who allows you to just do whatever you will, and they don't ever put the brakes on you, and they never say no, you are in a dangerous place. Because at some point, somebody's going to come up with something that is not what God said. And somebody has to have the gall to say, no, this is not what we're going to do. And I'm going to challenge you, because we live in a more secular world than we lived in 10 years ago. And I guarantee in 5 years it'll be more secular than it is now. At some point, you're going to have to make up in your mind, where is the line? What am I going to allow and what am I not going to allow? I'm not saying go out there and be like the Trumpsters. I'm not saying go out there and do something that's crazy. What I'm saying, though, is that at some point you got to make up in your mind, this is not okay. Because if not, you're going to find yourself in the same position as Aaron, who knew God, who had a relationship with God, who was fairly close. He was up there with Joshua and Moses. And the man of God with whom God gave instructions on how to anoint and to consecrate allowed the people and led them in their efforts to making an idol. Well, good people, I think we're going to stop right there tonight. We'll pick up here. We'll get the rest of 32 next week, and we'll pick up 33. Above all else, I want us to develop a holy boldness. And I want you to put the holy in front of the boldness. Because if you're bold without the holy, we end up doing something and causing some mess. But a holy boldness looks like the truth wrapped in love. The truth, you don't have to be nasty to people. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be evil. But you can tell people the truth in love. You can put boundaries in place in love. You can be a loving, safe place and say, but we're not going to do that here. Because the truth is that there are so many things that are fighting for your affection, that are fighting for your attention, and are fighting for your heart, that if you're not careful, you'll find yourself worshiping stuff too. Let's pray. God, we love you. We praise you for all that you are and all that you do. God, I thank you that in the beginning you are God. You were God and you still are God. God, we're grateful that your word and your name reign supreme. That when we remind you of your reputation, we remind you of what you said, God, you are faithful to stand on who you are. Now, God, as we go back into the world, I pray that you would redeem our time, God, that you would keep us and protect us and make your face to shine upon us, God. We love you. We praise you. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Y'all be blessed. We'll catch you next week.